Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality of here, and welcome to the grand finale of...
The Center of Saw!
Where I have my own little flashback. Last time I thought I was done, but a mysterious person in a pig mask informed me my nightmare was not yet over. I had one more movie to cover. And then there were a ton of comments about Spiral, but that movie's been pushed back to 2021, so it doesn't count. Anyway, this review is of Jigsaw, the 2017 movie that sought to revive the Saw franchise from the ashes that Saw 3D left it in. A movie so bad I got a community guideline strike for reviewing it. I mean, it couldn't have possibly been because of the gore. That stuff looked ridiculously fake. Which fortunately has been mostly rectified in today's review, Jigsaw. What do you do when it's been 7 years since the last entry and 11 years since Jigsaw has died? Well, make a movie that takes place that long since the last case and since Jigsaw has died, where a new ripe group of victims and police can mill about, accuse everyone of being the real killer, and generally fill out the running time. And as we know, the only thing that really matters is the last 5 minutes when they reveal all the twists, so... let's take a look at Jigsaw and pick apart the rest of it anyway. We open up to a horrifyingly jagged and sharp spike strip, because you can forget about all those scary, intense trap things. This is a good old-fashioned car chase. The man fleeing from the cops is Edgar Munson, played by Josiah Black. He's held up by police, but isn't coming quietly. He demands to speak with Detective Halloran, played by Callum Keith Rennie.
You put down that remote.
I can't.
What's that for?
Game's just getting started.
And I can't pause during an online match, Mom! Halloran tells his partner, Detective Keith Hunt, played by Clay Bennett, that if Edgar moves, shoot the detonator. That he already pulled the trigger on, but they can still blow his hand off! Among other things.
Which one of you assholes shot him in the chest?
I can't.
Well, there's like 6 or 7 of you motherfuckers shooting at the guy. Ever think there might be a chance that one of you doesn't have their aimbot on? Anyway, enough of that nonsense for now. We'll get back to the importance of it later. But first, we have to get to the real game. 5 poor little bucketheads have been gathered because they're a dirty bunch of lying liars!
Lies that you have told yourselves. Lies that have brutalized others. Confess. The truth will set you free.
Honey, this is a bit extreme, but... okay, yeah, the genes really do make your ass look fat. But it's not like that's a bad thing! The test here is... well, insanely easy. Jigsaw asks the participants to offer up a blood sacrifice, even specifying that the amount doesn't matter. It can be the smallest bit. Also, the chains begin to pull them towards a wall of circular saws. Somehow, it still takes these morons a while to realize what to do, but the puzzle's so simple they can fucking accidentally solve it, allowing all of them to move on. Oh, except for the one poor bastard who is one hell of a deep sleeper. Who, as far as I can tell, still accidentally managed to pass the test. It just doesn't matter for some fucking reason. So never mind Sleeping Beauty. The surviving characters include Carly, played by Brittany Allen, Anna, played by Laura Vandervoort, Ryan, played by Paul Bronston, and Mitch, played by Mandela Van Peebles.
He said it was a game. And I hope for all of our sakes that it is a game.
Oh yeah, why is that, sweetheart?
This game's gonna be won.
Looks like someone didn't watch the last 4 movies. After a victim's body is discovered, because, you know, it was hung up in a public park, we are introduced to our important doctor, Logan Nelson, played by Matt Passmore. We know he's important because he's actually off duty, but Detective Halloran drives up and demands his help with this important case, along with Eleanor Bonneville, played by Hannah Emily Anderson. And her fucking pocket lightsaber. Glad they took the time to establish that exists, but my suspension of disbelief is still pretty sore after seeing it. That's all you gotta say? Jesus, the man looks like he just came out of a botched game of Surgeon Simulator. Spying the missing Jigsaw piece, they muse that it might be a copycat killer, which, considering John's been dead for a decade, would seem most likely. No bother, they just so happen to dig a handy-dandy thumb drive out of the man's neck.
Okay then.
Yeah, guys, it's just secret clues in your mangled corpse. That's ruinous. But hey, you remember last week that busload of nuns that crashed into the wood chipper? That was wild, man. I mean, just trying to figure out which pieces went to which. Yeah. The thumb drive contains an audio file from Jigsaw. He says the games have begun anew. which they kind of already figured out, but also there are 4 more playing. Halloran figures they gotta run voice recognition on that file. But in the meantime, let's jump back on over to our happy little victims. They are being yanked forth into a pulley! Up until Mitch figures, hey, maybe we should take this handy-dandy cassette player and figure out what our test is. Seems while they were out, Jiggy injected Carla with one of those handy-dandy slow-acting poisons. But there's some syringes here, and one holds the antidote. The others are a dud and acid, so yay.
Failure to make the right choice could result in death for you all. I ask you, what is a life worth to you?
Okay, fuck the riddle. Just squeeze a little of each, figure out which one's the acid, and inject yourself with the 2 that aren't. But what is the answer? Well, that's handled via a handy-dandy flashback. Carla here was a purse snatcher, but didn't take into consideration that along with the old lady's money, she also swiped her inhaler, and getting robbed is kind of stressful, and that life was worth a smooth $3.53.
I choose right now. Come on, pick.
Well, you already solved the riddle, so the answer is obviously $3.53.
Pick one now. Come on, pick.
You already figured it out. Just take the obviously correct choice. Well, I understand that under stress, choices can be harder to make, but you already did the hard part. You figured out the right one. Just do it! Or do literally nothing, meaning they don't go down until Ryan says, fuck it, and stabs her with the syringe. Bundle, the syringe bundle. For fuck's sake, she said out loud what the correct answer was. Why did nobody think to maybe solve the puzzle properly? Thus, she's cured, but also has burning acid injected into her neck, eating her away from the inside. Also, yes, they did catch the 353 because that's the way they have to figure out which second set of numbers on which syringe to use on the combination lock. Later, first we need an update on the investigation, specifically the forensic work on that voice recording.
Voice was John Kramer. Matched.
Identical.
Matched.
What? He came back from the dead? Wouldn't be his first time.
No, it would. Again, it's kind of hard to tell because the movies don't exactly give much of a fuck about chronological order. Oh, that's it! Spiral takes place before this movie, and in it, John Kramer comes back as a zombie. So Kramer is dead, but alive. And no bother, back with the group, they figure out they're in the middle of nowhere and begin looking for a way out.
No! For real, you don't think he's trying to tell us something?
Yeah, Jigsaw says, don't fucking go this way, idiot! So obviously this idiot is gonna fucking go this way. Which, surprising no one, is a trap! Ryan's leg is quickly bound with piano wire, keeping him snugly in place, and occasionally tightening just to put him in that much more pain. However, Jiggy's nothing if not fair, and also provided a little handle under the floorboards, as well as an audio tape.
Pull the handle, and you will be set free.
Which is the one point in this movie where these idiots actually think for half a second and realize, hey, that's probably not going to be pleasant. Well, they got plenty of time to mull it over while we hop on back to the police and doctors. Victim number 2 has been tossed off a building, and that means it's time to search the corpse for evidence. Logan immediately identifies the damage as hydrofluoric acid, and finds the hidden jigsaw piece in the tongue. This is the part where the detectives start to ask who done it. Like they realize that in these movies you don't do a real investigation, you just figure out which character is the secret bad guy. They quickly explain away Logan's acid knowledge, but then...
What do you think about his second, Eleanor?
She's got a great ass. Big mouth. Seems to get off on this sick shit.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, as if her red hair wasn't a big enough clue that she's the red herring. Continuing to jump back and forth, it seems the room the surviving 3 find themselves in contains a little silo. There's a remote, but they just can't reach it, until Mitch hoists Anna up to grab it, obviously triggering the door to close and starting the next trap. Mitch and Anna are to be buried alive! Ryan can stop this, but he's gonna have to pull that lever, making it even more obvious that's gonna end badly for him.
Ryan, free yourself to free them.
I see my options here. Free myself, probably lose my leg, and these 2 survive. Or I could just sit here and watch them die, slowly and horrifyingly, and then I myself can die even slower as I'm still tied here with no fucking way to get out. Real head scratcher. And much like the slow-ass motherfucker he's cosplaying as, Ryan doesn't do the obvious thing right away, giving us plenty of time to watch these two be buried alive. Also, change up the scene back to the investigation. Seems that victim number 1 had some blood under their fingernails, and after careful analysis, it seems to come from...
John Kramer.
What? That's impossible.
It's a fact.
So are we going on the twin brother theory, or a clone soldier army of Jigsaws set forth into the world to test every motherfucker out there for every little misdeed they have ever done? Why does that sound like a better movie? Anyway, back with the victims, neither of them seem to know that you can just stand on grain, but even then, that's not killing them fast enough for Jigsaw. At this point, fuck it, just start dropping grenades in there. Death by carb overdose wasn't doing it for him, but the threat of having them die through slightly more gory means does get Ryan to pull the lever and get his leg chopped to pieces. So while they figure out where to go from here, let's stop off to see the doctors after hours at the bar. Though, I'd rather not. They have the chemistry of motherfucking helium and argon.
You'd make a good detective. Maybe I'm just too predictable.
Predictable? No.
She's a fucking red herring. We all know how this works, Logan. The movie spends the whole time saying, ooh, she's probably a killer, and then at the end we find out she's not the killer. On that note, she has a dark secret to share, because the police have been keeping an eye on her. Actual evidence to warrant an investigation be damned.
I wasn't at home like I told the cops. I was at my, studio.
She didn't want them to suspect her because she is, in fact, a very suspicious person. Don't you suspect something? Of course, Logan is interested in clarification, so they head on over, and we see... Eleanor collects Jigsaw memorabilia and rents out a fucking warehouse to store it in because that shit's really hard to fit into a one-bedroom apartment. Now, doesn't this make her look suspicious? Especially to their tail. However, what about that random guy from the opening? Well, he was secretly assassinated by a secret assassin, which is important, I think, because of things that I didn't bother paying enough attention to. So, back with our dwindling group of victims, they patch up Ryan so he can complain until he dies. But what's this? Another cassette player! Need something. I know. Well, it's time to learn Mitch's crime. You see, he sold some poor schmucka motorcycle, but...
You knew the brakes were faulty. You took his $600, and in return you delivered him to his end.
Well, that's just terrible business practices. Not only in the killing your customers way, but, oh, let's sell this motorcycle at a massive discount, but just not tell him about how it's actually broken, when instead we could just sell it for parts, make more money, and hey, not kill anyone in the process. The real kicker is that the poor bastard that Mitch killed was none other than John Kramer's nephew! I look forward to seeing who in Spiral wronged one of Jigsaw's second cousins. Mitch, however, is going to be tested by getting lowered into a spinning spiral blade of death! But at the very bottom, there happens to be a break, if he can just stay calm enough to reach it. Thing is, Anna has figured out another way to defeat the trap. Thus, Mitch is saved! For about 7 seconds. Well, it's better than nothing. So he's dead, but you know who else is dead? Jigsaw. And rather than find out who's actually responsible, the police decide, fuck it, dig up the man's corpse to prove he's not running around back from the dead testing people.
About this John Kramer bullshit.
Okay, well, that should be an easy lead. See who else in the city has rented out an excavator over the last 24 hours. which means they actually have to do an investigation. Well, Detective Hunt trailed Eleanor and Logan to that studio, so the police raid the place. In it, they find a horribly diced-up corpse. Only one thing to do now.
I'm gonna go pick up Logan.
I'll get the girl.
Round up the suspects and hope some actual clues or evidence materialize from that. Either that or just make sure all the characters are in the same place for Act 3. However, when Hunt shows up for Logan, the man is convinced that someone is trying to frame him. Kind of funny wording. Usually that involves planted evidence, not just defaulting to the important characters. But Logan points out that, hey, Halloran found the body. Halloran wanted Edgar dead. Halloran told everyone else to shoot the remote, but who shot Edgar?
You think your partner knows that you're with IA?
Wait a minute, how the fuck did you know that? Not important. What is important is that Hunt is with Internal Affairs, and Halloran kinda sorta has some weird pattern with homicides they were investigating. But what does Halloran have against Logan?
Said he was a moron in the press, twice.
No, I said he was an impulsive asshole. Twice.
I sure do hate that Logan. He called me names. Only one thing to do. Murder a bunch of people and frame him for it! By not actually framing him, but we shall default to thinking that it is him because he's one of the important characters, which will make our red herring an even more convincing red herring! Logan figures maybe if they actually look at evidence, they might get somewhere. No bother, crackle Ager open, and looky here, the bullet in his chest came from a Glock 17. No chance any of the other dozen cops present shooting at him did that now. So, Logan's free, and so is Eleanor. She's fangirling though because she's figured out where the game was being played. Jill Tuck's pig farm. Yeah, she had one of those. Anyway, they can swoop in to save the day.
This is a chance for us to save lives.
So we're gonna take out a serial killer with what? Our cunning intellects?
Well, obviously not. You gotta suggest something you actually have. But oh yeah, the pig farm! That's where our last two victims have been hanging around. One because he can't really walk with his stubby leg, and the other because there's literally nowhere else to go in this poorly thought out trap dungeon. No bother, when she says fuck it, breaks through the door and tries to escape, she is stabbed by the syringe of screw you! Which, of course, means waking up in a dingy room with an ankle chain. Her and Ryan have been brought out here by none other than... fucking Jigsaw! He's just there, getting jiggy with it. Played once more by Tobin Bell. Jigsaw here easily steals the show as he lists off the various sins each participant is guilty of. Ryan's kind of a douchebag, but the truth is, he's always been a douchebag ever since he was a teenager, and his douchebaggery got all his friends killed, which he then blamed for the accident. Also, might as well pepper this life lesson with some more retcon backstory as to how John Kramer wound up in his own predicament.
Were it not for a careless mistake by a resident at the hospital I was in, my cancer could have been diagnosed a lot sooner.
So his nephew was cheated and died in an auto accident, and his wife was attacked at her own clinic and miscarried, and it was a mistake that led to him not getting the diagnosis for his brain cancer until it was inoperable. God damn, John Kramer has to be the unluckiest man alive. But what is Anna's sin? Well, she just so happened to be John and Jill's old neighbor at a bad time when her husband fell asleep and smothered the baby. Or did he? John was at his window that night and knows what really happened. Shut up! Yeah, she just murdered her own baby and framed her husband for it because it just seemed easier than buying some headphones. Seems her husband was a bit drunk, though, and really didn't know what happened. Thinking he killed their child, he killed himself. But hey, so long as she got away with murder, right? Well, until John came along at least, but as we know, he's fair about these things, giving them an opportunity to learn their lesson. Later, first we gotta check in on all the other characters, climax time and all that. Well, Hunt found a handy-dandy bag of fleshy Jigsaw pieces in Halloran's freezer, so hey, evidence! In the meantime, Logan and Eleanor are investigating the pig farm. Or rather, Logan is investigating while Eleanor is fangirling over her favorite killer's handiwork.
It's Jigsaw.
Jigsaw's dead.
Is he?
I mean, he has been since Saw 3, but has that really fucking mattered? On that note, back to Jigsaw. He's got one last test for these two to straighten up and see the error in their ways.
Now, if you want to achieve your freedom, you have to learn. You have to realize that you've been doing it backwards.
Maybe when Jigsaw puts up a sign saying, "Don't fucking go this way," don't.
Is your key to freedom.
All right, John Kramer's a Second Amendment advocate. Bit out of a left field, but I'll accept it. Thus, this is their final game. Here's a shotgun, here's one shell, and do what you will. Which means we have to jump over to those other, far less interesting assholes and find out how they're doing. Logan starts accusing Eleanor, because after all, red herring, gotta point the fingers. However, before long, he is attacked by Halloran. The tables have turned, and they fight, as Eleanor runs for her life. So, enough of that tense chase scene. Let's hop back to the game. Pacing. What even is it? Anna figures, fuck it. The test is to kill each other, so that's exactly what she's gonna do.
Backwards. He said we've got it backwards! No!
Ah, dang it. She didn't listen to his advice, which would have helped her murder him more effectively. But that's not the real kicker here. Seems John was being quite literal about that shotgun shell being their key to freedom. At least before Anna blew them the fuck up, bending them every which way, making them impossible to use. So Ryan gets to slowly die alone in a room with a chain on his leg. Who says this isn't a proper Saw movie? Oh, wait, there's still that stuff going on with Logan and Halloran. And don't you hate it when people stab you in the back with sedatives, you wake up a few weeks later and you have to review movies? Waking up an unspecified amount of time later, we find that Logan and Halloran have been chained up with those surgical death lasers they conveniently established existed earlier. The voice of Jigsaw booms over the intercom, letting them know they are the final test. Just gotta confess your sins, and you can go free. I gotta press the button to see which one of them gets tested, though. Not to worry, Halloran volunteers.
No, God! I've done nothing wrong!
Like that matters in a Saw trap. You remember the final chapter? Bobby's wife roasted to death because he lied to her. She didn't do a damn thing, but he was an asshole, so gotta burn to death. But what's this? It turns out Logan was the doctor who fucked up labeling John Kramer's X-ray! And he's sorry. Also, that doesn't really matter. Ooh, close one there, Logan, but we were actually looking for the time you went to Jill Tuck's clinic opening party and double-dipped. So Halloran feels confidently safe. However, his own laser necklace begins to glow, and terrified, he starts screaming about how his corrupt cop-ass has led to so many people dying, and it saves him in the nick of time from those clearly fiery lasers, while Logan's were less so. That's because they were fake lasers! Or rather, they were actual real-world lasers, because lasers don't do the shit that lasers do in this movie. But the point is, this is the big twist. Logan was the man the whole time. So, pull out your notebooks, class, we've got a lot of fucking explaining to do. Logan got that confession audio from Halloran as a means to frame him. The game we've been watching all movie wasn't actually being played right now. It was another random Jigsaw test from a decade ago, back when he was still alive. Logan was the man who didn't make it out of the first room, tested for his bullshit reason, but John realized at the last second, yeah, that reason's kind of bullshit, and saved him in secret. This, of course, meant that Logan was recruited because John loves collecting interns.
I wanted my game to be identical to Jigsaw's. So I went through your cases. Found players just like the ones in the original game.
And in order to ensure the same outcome, well, I guess you just fucking murdered him. Where's John Kramer back from the dead when you need him? Also, Edgar was Halloran's informant, so he was free despite his criminal record, and the guy kinda murdered Logan's wife. Oh yeah, by the way, Logan shot Edgar because everyone in this movie has insane accuracy. Little sleight of hand and boom, got the frame up. He's got John Kramer's voice through his skill with Audacity. He got John Kramer's blood because he's a fucking doctor and they just have it in stock. He planted the flesh Jigsaw pieces, and he let Halloran know the button press was a test, and he failed. So, turn your face into a fleshy CGI gore flower, 'cause I speak for the dead and shit. The end. Really don't know what the fuck kind of send-off phrase "I speak for the dead" is. I mean, it's not supposed to be about vengeance. That's kind of why Jigsaw saved you from his own trap. It's supposed to be giving people a chance to better themselves through rules like a game. Hence, game over. Anyway, that was Jigsaw. Maybe it's a good thing it didn't sully the phrase game over. Now, when I do these summer specials, people tend to know what's coming, and I've heard plenty about how I was in for a nightmare going into this movie. And to that I have to say, it's not as bad as you make it out to be. The gore effects, for one, are a major step up from Saw 3D, and pretty high quality all around for the series. Also, the presentation is pretty sharp, with good-looking sets and good-looking actors. Possibly too good on that last part. You never really get the sense that these are real people. They look far too much like they were all kidnapped from a modeling agency. It gives a lot of the character interaction that kind of soap opera quality, where two people with absolutely perfect makeup say their lines adequately enough, but never sound like they're really having a conversation, just going through the scene, which kind of takes me out of it. Which, of course, isn't a good way to build dread. The suspension of disbelief was challenged with the super lasers, but Dawson's coroners was what did it in. This, of course, adds to the traditional big twists, and well, they don't have the same impact as previous movies. First of all, because it was kind of obvious that Logan was the mastermind, Halloran was clearly working towards his own comeuppance, Eleanor was too damn suspicious without any substance to it, and Hunt was, well, he was there? Looks like we ran out of characters to suspect. The second big twist, that the game where we were watching was one that happened 10 years prior, that was pretty badly done. In Saw 2, the game being played a few hours prior was a big revelation because the characters were seeing it being played during the time the movie takes place on the monitors. That's not the case here. Instead, we just have the characters in the present musing that Jigsaw might be alive, interspliced with Jigsaw being alive, without the context that that's because he's not dead yet. The test of the past only has anything to do with the present because all these new characters in new locations doing new things with traps actually were there all along. At least Dr. Gordon was actually there in the first movie and was played by a fantastic actor. I don't give a damn about any of these new assholes because they're just going to get replaced by newer assholes who were there all along even more later. Overall, Jigsaw is better than the final chapter in a lot of ways, but that's not to say it's a good Saw movie. The best part to me was when we got more scenes of John Kramer musing to his students about the error of their ways, mostly because Tobin Bell has such great screen presence. Beyond that, this is a fine horror movie to put on during a marathon for Halloween, or in the background for a horror party, but if you plan to sit down and watch it, get your friends and get some drinks. Coming in at 2 sliding silo saw blades out of 5. So I guess that does it for the summer special. Still on time if you base it on the equinox. Thank you all for watching. I have been Dr. Shado. And remember, if your aim is to do Jigsaw proud, maybe don't murder a bunch of people so you have enough bodies for your cover story. Bathroom. Great. Nice bidet.
Hello, Decker. You've been watching me for a while now.
Let's take a look at Saw and see if it makes the cut.
But for even longer, I have been watching you. It was obvious if you had been paying attention, but I found you to be far too distracted with your movie review marathon to realize anything was amiss.
Eric's still not going to let this bother him for too long, though. You see, he's got ass tons of other cases on his desk, so Jigsaw's going to have to find another officer to toy with.
And through this period of self-harm, you felt the compulsion to transform the mental anguish some of the tales put you through into physical pain. Completely missing the point of suffering, externalizing your torment as a means to cope with it, making it easier for yourself.
Why are you doing this?
Well, we can't keep on the one story for too long. We gotta fill out the runtime somehow.
This despite the fact that even pictures on your videos warned you about the marks you would leave on your forehead, and you agreed your behavior was not healthy.
Your lifelong instincts will tell you to do one thing, but I implore you to do the opposite.
I don't know, man. You were doing the opposite of what I thought was a good idea the whole goddamn way through.
But I wanted to know if you could see the error of your ways with the proper motivation.
Until a person is faced with death, it's impossible to tell whether they have what it takes to survive.
So we played a game, and all you had to do was follow the rules. Which you have failed.
Like, we didn't need a flashback to that. That literally just happened. Oh, man!
Said he was a moron in the press, twice.
No, I said he was an impulsive asshole. Twice.
Oh god, I smell burning hair.